Hi friends, and happy Monday! This week we're heading up the I-5 about an hour north of Los Angeles. Join me as we step back in time at the Fort Tejon State Historic Park. Located just off the highway at the top of the grapevine, you've probably driven right past this historic spot without even realizing it if you've traveled through this section of California. The grounds are open here to the public from sunrise to sunset, and the visitor center and historic exhibits are open from 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. daily. Fort Tejon was built and established in 1854 with the primary directive to protect settlers in the area, as well as Native Americans on the Sebastian Indian Reservation from raids of neighboring tribes. In the 1850s, thousands of American settlers moved west to California during the gold rush, which led to an increasing number of confrontations in this area with the local group of Chumash people. As a result, the government dispatched the 1st U.S. Dragoons to help de-escalate these tensions, and it was decided to build a permanent fort in this location, in part due to the ideal topography and the natural resources here.
In 1940, 5 acres of the land here was deeded to California to establish a state park, and Fort Tejon is one of California's wonderful small state parks. Along the grounds, the remaining original historic buildings here have been documented by the Historic American Buildings Survey. You can stroll the paths to numerous ruins, and several buildings have been restored, including 2 which are open to the public to enter and view up close, with artifacts and detailed information about the role and function they played here. Inside the Barracks No. 2 building, you can view the 1st General's Room, along with historic photographs and interesting local and military memorabilia from the 1800s.
Although the structures and unique history of this fort are fascinating to learn about, it's also a somber reminder of the violent atrocities that occurred in this region as the Native Americans who lived and thrived here for centuries were forced onto reservations. In its prime, the fort was comprised of over 40 military buildings, along with a small civilian community that was developed to the south. Although the majority of the structures here have been reduced to their foundations, you can still explore a reconstructed officers' quarters, the original barracks building, and several other preserved structures.
The guard room was where guards served in 24-hour shifts. They were required to stay in uniform the entire time, with only a wooden shelf for a bed and resting area, definitely roughing it. The U.S. Army of the 1840s and 50s was known to have harsh prison conditions. Jails here provided little ventilation, no heat, and small, cramped quarters. Interestingly, it's been reported that multiple prisoners were able to escape from the Fort Tejon jail here at night.
In 1857, Fort Tejon was rocked by one of the largest earthquakes in California's history. Although the epicenter of the 8.0 magnitude quake was over 100 miles north, it was dubbed the Fort Tejon earthquake because the fort
was the largest populated area to experience damage, and today you can visit the reconstructed officers' quarters. The parlor room has been staged to appear as it would have back in 1855 when Captain John W. Gardner arrived with his wife.
Some of the reconstructed exhibits you'll enjoy here include the kitchen, basement dining room, and bedrooms.
An example of an early day dining room, this provided space for the Gardners to both eat and to entertain. The basement was mainly used to store food, but it's said Captain Gardner kept a barrel with preserved reptiles and amphibians collected for the Smithsonian Institute. You can walk up the old wooden staircase to view an adult bedroom, and interestingly, much of the furniture here was built by Fort Tejon's own carpenter. You can also peek at a children's bedroom upstairs. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, the Dragoons were sent to guard Los Angeles and eventually to fight in the war back east. The California Volunteers took over operations at the fort, and soon they were faced with increasing violence between the Owens Valley Paiute tribe and the encroaching white settlers. Tragically, this resulted in the Paiute tribe being forcibly removed from their lands to reside here at the fort, and after a year with minimal food, clothing, and resources, the Paiute population suffered great losses, and they were moved to the Tule River Indian Reservation, and the fort was officially closed by the U.S. Army in 1864. After the fort's closure, the buildings were used as stables and residences for workers on the Tejon Ranch until 1940, when 5 acres of the remnants of this once thriving fort were deeded over to the state and eventually became the California State Park we see here today. You can use your cell phone to discover the park with the self-guided audio tour available.
Make sure to spend some time in the Visitor Center to read fascinating information about the history in this area. In the late 1850s, the U.S. Army brought camels to the fort in hopes that they would improve transportation across California's desert. However, the experiment was short-lived, as the camels were expensive to feed and they scared other horses and livestock, so they were sent to other locations within the region. Peter LeBec was recorded as the first pioneer in Kern County, and while grizzly bears have long been extinct in this state, in 1837, he was killed by one, right here.
A memorial plaque marks the spot and is hard for visitors to miss as they stroll the grounds.
In addition to the history you encountered here, both plant and animal life is abundant in the area. There are many mature oak you can find on the property, and some are believed to be over 400 years old. Also, the year-round Grapevine Creek attracts deer, badgers, bobcats, and all sorts of wildlife.
Rattlesnakes can be found in this area, and they're an important part of the natural environment here, but it is important to watch your step as you walk along this path. Now, I didn't catch any rattlesnakes in my view along my walk today, but I saw something equally as special. If you look in the distance, you can see a mule deer and a bobcat enjoying the dreary weather together, side by side. Wildlife is often abundant in this area, so it's not a complete surprise to see these two, but it was still a special treat. After a few minutes, our bobcat friend made his way back off into the wilderness, and soon the rain started, and the mule deer followed suit as the rain began to pour down heavier. Our last stop of the day takes us to the northernmost section of this state park. You have to cross the creek, and you can either drive or walk to the military cemetery. This site holds the remains of 6 enlisted men who died at Fort Tejon. Once you've taken time to walk the grounds here, you can drive or walk back to the main entrance. And remember, this state park is located directly off the I-5 freeway, making it an easy stop I definitely recommend if you're heading up or down the Grapevine.
Thanks so much for joining me today at this California Historic State Park. And for details on Fort Tejon, see my full blog post at flyingdawnmarie.com. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. And until next week, I hope you find adventure and encouragement wherever you go. Bye.